You know, sometimes you drive past the same old gas station for 30 years and never really notice the guy who's always there wiping windshields or sweeping the lot. He's just part of the scenery, quiet, steady, wearing the same faded jacket no matter the season. That's how most folks in town saw Ronald Read. Just another working man getting by on a modest paycheck, nothing more. Then, one day in 2014, when he passed at 92, the town learned something that still stops me cold. The man they thought barely scraped by had left behind nearly $8 million. Not to flashy relatives, not to some big charity that would put his name on a building, just to the local library and the hospital that had taken care of him in his final years. And the craziest part, not a single person who knew him, friends, neighbors, even family, had any idea he was sitting on that kind of money. It hits different when you're past 40 or 50 and you start thinking about your own path. You look back at all the times you told yourself you needed a bigger salary before you could really get ahead. Ronald never had that bigger salary. He earned roughly $32,000 a year for most of his life, about $15.89 an hour. Yet there it was, $8 million quietly accumulated, while everyone around him assumed he was just getting by. And this is where the whole story starts to feel like a quiet rebuke to the way we've been taught to measure success. The first thing that strikes you if you sit with it long enough is how Ronald approached money with a kind of fierce, almost protective frugality. Not the bitter, pinch penny kind that makes people uncomfortable at the dinner table. It was deeper than that. He simply refused to let any dollar slip away without a purpose. When your paycheck is that modest, you learn pretty quickly that lifestyle creep is the silent thief. He made sure every dollar had a job to do. I think about my own friend sometimes, the one pulling in over $700,000 a year. On paper, he's won the game. In real life, he's got less than $50,000 in savings and only manages to tuck away about $20,000 a year. The mortgage stretches him. There are 3 car payments between him and his wife, and the spending just flows. It's not that he's irresponsible, it's that the money comes in so fast it feels like it can handle anything. Ronald never had that illusion. He lived in the same modest way for decades, not because he hated nice things, but because he loved the freedom that came from knowing his money was working instead of disappearing. That quiet daily discipline, choosing to repair instead of replace cooking at home, instead of eating out, treating every dollar like it mattered, became the foundation everything else stood on. From there, the story moves into something even more surprising. Ronald didn't just save. He put that money to work early and kept it working for a very long time. The numbers are unforgiving when you lay them out. Imagine setting aside $3,000 a year, about 10% of that janitor salary, and earning a steady 8% return, the kind you can get from something as straightforward as the S&P 500. Start at 18 and by 65, you're looking at $1,358,000. Begin at 25 and it drops to $777,169. Wait until 35 and you're down to $339,849. 10 years of delay doesn't just cost you time, it costs you $437,000 or more. Ronald understood this in a bone-deep way. He kept investing long past normal retirement, riding those extra 27 years all the way to 92. Those later decades weren't extra. They were the period when compounding finally did the heavy lifting and turned careful saving into $8 million. What stays with me is how ordinary his approach felt. He bought shares in companies he actually knew from daily life, the ones that paid solid dividends. When those checks came in the mail, he didn't cash them for vacations or new furniture. He turned every cent right back into more shares through automatic reinvestment. 95 stocks in total, many of them steady blue-chip names. He wasn't chasing excitement or trying to beat the market. He simply stayed in the game year after year, letting time do what it does best when you don't interrupt it. And that brings us to the layer that feels almost philosophical. Ronald never acted like a true believer in the market. He just behaved as if it would keep working quietly and consistently while the rest of us debate whether it still can. Look at Warren Buffett. 99% of his current net worth, well over $160 billion, came after his 60th birthday. At 60, he was already worth around $3 billion. The next 35 years of steady investing turned that into something almost beyond comprehension. Ronald's story is the same principle on a scale the rest of us can actually reach. The big gains don't come evenly across your life. They tend to explode toward the end, which is exactly why starting late hurts so much and why continuing long after others have stopped pays so well. The final piece that ties it all together is how Ronald never relied on that single janitor paycheck. Like most people who build real wealth, he had several streams feeding the same pool over time: his earned income from pumping gas and cleaning floors, the growing investment income from those dividends he always reinvested, and the quiet interest that even modest savings can generate when left alone for decades. Research shows 65% of millionaires maintain at least 3 income streams, 45% have 4, and nearly 30% have 5 or more. Ronald lived that reality without ever calling it a strategy. He just kept adding small, steady bricks. But the part that still gives me pause is how completely he kept it all hidden. For 70 years, the man who swept floors and filled tanks never once let on that he was sitting on a fortune. No one close to him knew. He never used the money to change how he moved through the world or to signal that he had made it. In a culture that rewards showing off, Ronald chose the opposite: radical privacy paired with radical patience. That combination feels almost defiant now. So when the truth finally came out after he was gone, it wasn't just a surprising number on a piece of paper. It was a quiet question aimed straight at every one of us who has ever told ourselves we needed more income before we could start building something real. You don't actually need the glamorous salary. You need the stubborn refusal to let your dollars drift away, the willingness to let time do its heavy lifting, and the discipline to keep playing the game long after it stops feeling exciting or new. Ronald Read never stood on a stage lecturing people about money. He simply lived the paradox so completely that years later, it still makes us look again at our own choices with fresh eyes. What small, quiet decision are you making or not making today that your future self might one day look back on with either gratitude or regret? Drop a comment below and let me know which of these ironies lands closest to where you are in life right now. And if you're curious about the only 4 numbers that actually matter on the road to 7 figures, the next video is right here waiting for you.